Welcome into another episode of your WCPO High School Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Dyer. I'm pleased to be joined by Elder head football coach Doug Ramsey via Skype today, and we are on Facebook Live as well. And Coach, thanks for taking a few minutes to join me.
Sure, no problem.
Appreciate it. As always, this High School Insider Podcast is presented by our local Chick-fil-A restaurants where the winning play is always chicken. Download the app today for extra points. And you can always get this WCPO High School Insider on Google Play, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. And I want to get right to it with Coach Ramsey. Elders 2-0 after a big 38-31 overtime win over Indianapolis Cathedral last Friday night there at the Pit. And before we kind of get into the game and kind of look ahead to this Friday's matchup, Coach, I know it was kind of an interesting dilemma there with Cathedral. They were 53 minutes late to the game, getting stuck on traffic there on Interstate 74. And kind of take us how that kind of went there in the pregame, and maybe how that was remedied, and maybe even how it took you guys out of rhythm.
Yeah, it was actually kind of hard because I think the hard part was you didn't know exactly when they were going to get there. We wanted to go through a normal warm-up and those types of things, so it made it tough. But, I told the kids, there's always going to be things that happen. You got to face some adversity, whatever. I mean, we were in better shape than they were. They were stuck on a bus for 4 hours on a 2-hour trip. So, but, yeah, it worked out. And, I thought our kids played really well on Friday night.
Another big game from your senior quarterback, Matthew Luby. He threw for a touchdown, rushed for 3 scores, including the 6-yard touchdown in overtime to lift the Panthers. His 10-yard touchdown early in the fourth quarter helped to tie the game there at 28-all. And then you had Sam Harmeyer's 33-yard field goal, that is, with 33 seconds left, easy for me to say, sent the game to overtime. Doug, just talk about your offensive effort and your output there, not only with Matthew, but obviously Joe Royer, your son Drew. A lot of players contributed there on offense.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. I think you start off with our offensive lines played really well. Both games, they've done a good job. Matthew gives you so many different things. He throws the ball well, but his ability to run, I've said this a number of times, he is probably the fastest player I've ever coached, so having that threat, I think, 2 of his runs were, they covered us pretty well, and he decided he's going to take off and, picks up 17 yards here, runs for a touchdown there. I think, Joe Royers, he had a big game, a lot of third down catches he made. Drew's given us some contribution as a slot guy, and I think our backs, Joseph Catania and Cooper Johnson have done a real nice job as well. So we've got some weapons, but again, I think the key, as long as our offensive line plays well, we've got a chance to score points.
Talk about your offensive line. Everybody has highlighted, obviously, Jacob James and Luke Kandra for good reason and where they're going to be going next year. But just talk about that push that you're getting from that O-line to really help these guys.
Well, like I said, those 2 guys next to each other, on the left side of our line is, you've got an Ohio State player and a Louisville player and guys who love to play football, tough guys. That's a good start. But I think we've got some other. Mason Berger is playing center for us, first-year starter. Mason's done a great job. Very intelligent kid, making all the calls and things up front. Really kind of holds the group together. And then Carter Smith is a guy who played every snap for us last year as well at right tackle. Probably a little undersized to be a tackle, but very athletic. I mean, a guy who in grade school was a running back, so great athleticism there. And Drew Beckenhop is our lone junior playing at right guard. And he's, I think he stepped in and he's contributed and played well. So, that's, like I said, that's just the key. They're all guys who are fairly athletic players and tough. And I think that's the key, being tough.
Take us through a little bit of the atmosphere there. First home game there at the Pit, and obviously an overtime finish. What a way to kind of have that home opener there in the start of this season.
Yeah, it was one of the better, really non-GCL game crowds I think in a while. The stadium was about full. It was loud. People weren't sitting on their hands. It was a great game. I mean, if you weren't excited watching that game, then you're really not much of a football fan. So, I think the atmosphere was really, really good. And their coach he sent me an email on Saturday morning asking for some film or whatnot, and just made a comment of how great the atmosphere was and how much they enjoyed being here. And so, it was a good home start. And that's our hope. You have a game like that, and people get excited about the team, and each time you play, more and more people come out to watch.
Obviously, a big challenge. You alluded to this during the preseason as well. Coming up Friday night, we have Clearwater Academy, a team from Florida that's coming into town actually tomorrow, and then going to be playing Elder there at the Pit on Friday night. What do you expect from this team on Friday night?
Very, very athletic, loaded with Division I players. They've only got 35 guys on the team, but I think 12 of them have scholarship offers. They've got a receiver. I believe you pronounce his name Ajo. He is already committed to Clemson. They've got a couple of defensive ends who, I think are rated in the top 100 players in Florida. So they've got guys all over the place. Very, very athletic. They've got 2 offensive tackles that are, in the 6'6", 6'7", 330, 340-pound range. So we're going to have our hands full.
Talk about that challenge. I mean, you never back away from whether it be the Herb Street event from years ago, whether it be the Crosstown Showdown, or whether it's a one-year deal like this game with Clearwater. I mean, what's it like just to kind of play a variety of styles and here in the first 3 weeks before you kind of get into GCL play? What's that? What do you tell your team about this opportunity?
Well, I think the thing is, I think our kids, they enjoy these kind of challenges. You talk about there's a couple kids on that team that may be playing in the NFL, and so a lot of them will be playing on Saturdays and say, hey, we're going out and competing against a group of guys like that. I compared it to, back in 2015, we played a team from New Jersey that was loaded like this, the team from North Carolina that had a 109-game winning streak, Miami Central, when Dalvin Cook was a sophomore and he's a third-string running back on that team, which tells you how good they were. But, it's a challenge, and I think that it's something that our kids really enjoy. We have a new coach on our team this year with the program, Scott Fortcamp, who was at Coleraine for forever. He coached with Kerry and then with Tom, and his kids are going to be coming to Elder, so he got the opportunity to come here. And and he was talking the other day about how much fun it's been in our first 2 games and preparing for this third and teams that you don't normally see. He's like, we always played X and LaSalle, and then we played 8 GMC games. To see different people from other states, for him, it's been exciting. And it's something that we've known all along, just the opportunity to compete against, great programs. You think about Hana's been a playoff team for several years in a row here, all the state championships that a team like Cathedral's won, and then you're going to play a team that's fairly new to 11-man football, but they are an international school, and they've kind of got kids from all over the place. Like the Joe, he was a Canadian player and was looking for a place to come into the United States to get recruited, and so they've got players, and it's just an opportunity.
Does he remind you, Joe? Does he remind you of somebody, or maybe somebody the Elders faced in the past?
Well, when you look at him, he reminds me of T.O. is who he reminds me of. He is a big high school football player, especially for a receiver. But he's a big physical guy that runs pretty well. Honestly, I'm not sure we've seen anybody, because we've seen guys who can run. We've seen big guys, but he's kind of a combination of the two with speed and size.
Talked about they were an 8-man football team for a while. I mean, any idea? I know this is probably unfamiliar territory for most of teams in Ohio that play regular 11-man football. But any idea? I mean, you've gotten some feedback. Maybe you've read something online about how that transition is. How does a program go from 8-man to 11-man? How do they make that decision? I mean, any insight into that stuff?
No, none actually, because I didn't know they were an 8-man football team until someone told me at Dad's Club last night. So okay. I really had no idea. I just know I'd seen some film of them last year. They were 11-0 last year. We're a pretty good team, and then they've added, I'm going to say, 6 or 7 transfers to that group, and so they've picked up their talent just a little bit this year.
When you go into that scouting and you watch the film, I mean, take me through, how does that compare to an opponent that you're very familiar with, such as a GCL opponent or even a team from Southwest Ohio? I mean, are you just looking for the tendencies and habits and obviously the X's and O's of how they kind of do things offensively and defensively? I mean, does that change much? Do you take more time? Do you take less time because they're so unfamiliar?
Yeah, honestly, it's hard. I think when you play people that or at least a team like Cathedral, we watched them against Moeller.
Sure.
So you there's some familiarity and what Moeller's like. But when you play these teams from Florida, it's really hard to gauge, how good is the talent? So really it's more about the X's and O's. It's about the tendencies, like you said. It's about what gives them problems. And unfortunately, watching them in the first two games, they haven't had too many problems. So they've won 66-7 and 50 whatever to nothing.
They put up 50 something last week. Yep.
Yeah, so they're a team that can score and they keep people from scoring. They honestly, they don't do a lot. They're I think their philosophy is, we're probably better than you, and we're going to do this, and you better be able to beat us that way.
Sure.
So unless they change things, the mental preparation for this week isn't like last week against Cathedral, who lined up in 4, 5, 6 different fronts and gave you all kinds of blitzes and ran a lot of different things on offense. This week it's they're a 4-down team and it has a couple blitzes, and offensively they're going to run inside zone, a little bit outside zone, and they're going to throw out a play action. So it's what you get.
Elder football coach Doug Ramsey joining me on the WCPO High School Insider podcast. And Coach, before I let you go, just bigger picture here. Where do you think you are? I know it's only a small sample size, 2 games into the season, but what do you really like about this group? Maybe just camaraderie wise, and maybe outside the X's and O's at this point, going into week 3.
I think a couple of things. One, as far as X's and O's do go, I think offensively we're kind of what we thought we would be. Defensively we're that work in progress. We got a lot of new faces. I thought we did some good things the other night. We just need to get a little bit more physical, attack a little bit more on defense. But I think that all comes with experience. But I think the big thing, I think this is a group of guys that get along together very well. I think it's a group of guys that love playing football. And that's what we always talk about it. If you're willing to buy in and do the things that that we need you to do, you work hard, and we have some talent, we always have a chance to be a pretty good football team. And I think we're on our way to that. I don't know what our record's going to end up, because you look down the road at the schedule and it's a tough road. But I think if we're a team that is fortunate enough in the end to be a playoff team, and I think we can get in and make some noise and do some things as long as we stay healthy, because that's the one negative I have right now is just our depth. We don't have it's not like it was 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago, where we had 100 guys and you had, a lot of backups. That's not the case anymore. We're actually playing, Joe Royer's playing some defensive end. Luke Kandra's playing some defensive line. So is Carter Smith, and David Larkins, our tight end, is playing some D-line. So we've got guys that are playing both sides of the ball. Just not all the time, but just because of a depth thing.
How do you kind of watch them? I mean, in terms of, you hear about it in basketball more, about watching your minutes and everything like that, but just how can you tell, maybe whether it's you or one of your coaches on your staff? I mean, hey, Luke's, as much as he's prepared for the moment or whatever, I mean, if a game is really going long and deep and it's really intense, I mean, how do you kind of monitor all that in terms of making sure that they're effective late in the game?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's hard, it's production. What are they doing? Especially when they're on defense. Are they getting anything done this series? Or they look like they're tired? Do we need them to get off the field? But this is all new to us as well. We've not really done a whole lot of this in the past. So, it's more, I think, more about practice and how you practice them. And we're trying to figure that out. Be able to get them enough reps on both sides of the ball that they're ready, but at the same time, not overdoing it during the week. that come Friday night that they're gassed going into the game. So it's just kind of it's a live and learn thing. We're learning on the go.
Coach, really appreciate your time and insight as always, and best of luck to the Panthers Friday night as it plays.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks, you very
Doug.
much.
Appreciate it. That was Elder football coach Doug Ramsey joining me on the WCPO High School Insider Podcast. I want to remind everybody this High School Insider Podcast is presented by our local Chick-fil-A restaurants, where the winning play is always chicken. Go for the extra point today with a side of their new macaroni and cheese. And as we just got done talking with Elder Coach Doug Ramsey there, I mentioned this Clearwater Academy team is absolutely loaded with talent. Looking around the other programs in the GCL South, just staying with the GCL South for a moment, LaSalle shut out Mason 31-0 last week. Quarterback Zach Branham had a second straight week of really consistent play there for the Lancers. 126 yards passing, 133 yards rushing. And, of course, St. X with a big win over Coleraine, 21-14 there at Cardinal Stadium in the annual rivalry that was renewed once again, part of a 2-year agreement between both programs that, lo and behold, they may see each other for another time here in the postseason. But got to catch up with St. X coach Steve Specht after the game.
Still learning the offense, our kids are, and they're trying to get used to it. Coleraine poses some problems defensively because they're so doggone fast that it took our kids a little while to get used to the speed of the game. But we've got a lot to clean up. As I said before, Mike, it's week 2. That's a playoff football team that we just played tonight, and it exposes a lot of your issues. And this game always shows you week 2 what you have to work on, what you have to get better at. And, God willing, we'll see them down the road. We've always talked about it. It's like, God willing, we'll see them again, for both of us. That means we're both playing well at the end of the year, and we're both making it into the playoffs.
Tell you what, I was really impressed with St. X's offense. When you talk about senior quarterback Matthew Reevy, thought he really controlled the tempo well, really managed the game, just really played within the design of the offense. And then 2 big-time playmakers for the Bombers, Liam Clifford, the junior wide receiver, and also senior tight end, that is Marshall Lang, the Northwestern commit. 8 receptions, 111 yards receiving, and 3 touchdowns. And a lot of this credit is really going to St. Xavier's offensive coordinator, Andrew Coverdale. He came over from Louisville Trinity this past season, and got the chance to speak with him after the game.
We want to have a system that's versatile enough that whoever shows up on our doorstep, we can make full use of their skill sets. We would like to do that within a balanced context. We would love to be able to run and pass equally. It didn't look like that tonight, but that's what we would be able to do. I've never had a tight end with the skill set that 88 has. Fortunately, we've been able to plug him in and make use of him in some ways that are different before. The cutesy analogy I gave was, if we were just learning French, that it would be like learning. It's not like learning French; it's learning Russian, because not only do they have to learn a new language, they have to learn the Cyrillic alphabet. Okay. So and that goes from everything to what we want out of practice to the communication. I'm learning every day what is fair to expect and what is not. You don't go in with what you did week 12 or year 12 at Trinity, but the kids absorbed it incredibly well. I would say we're as far or further along than I could have hoped for with the process.
Over and over this summer, Steve Specht alluded to the fact that his friend Andrew Coverdale has really made a difference in the Bombers' offense, and you can see that time and time again. And speaking with Andrew, I mean, him and Steve met 2003 in a coaching clinic in Indiana, and if you talk to people around the St. X program, they kind of refer to Andrew as the quote-unquote mad scientist, but he's really made a world of difference so far in the first 2 games. St. X plays at Penn High School in the South Bend area this Friday night, and the Bombers obviously are 2-0 and off to a great start there on North Bend Road. Our WCPO game of the week is Princeton at Sycamore, a big-time GMC matchup, an opener for conference play for both 2-0 programs. We're looking forward to seeing both these teams. Princeton, obviously, everybody knows from our docuseries, the Hypeville High, this entire summer with all the loaded, talented recruits on that team, including Paris Johnson, Darion Henry, both going to Ohio State, Jaheim Thomas going to UC, and Juan Jarrett going to Kansas. And they're going to have a few other commits as well. Sycamore, Coach Scott Detillo, got a chance to catch up with him earlier this week, and he's really excited about this opportunity. Came back and defeated Kings last week, and a very impressive effort for the Aviators. I know he's really impressed with their junior quarterback, Andrew Fair, and really controlling the game, as I kind of mentioned with Matthew Reevy at St. X. I think it's just being very accurate and getting things done for the Aviators. Jordan McConnell is definitely a player you need to watch offensively for the Aviators. And then their linebacker, senior linebacker, Apollo Ford. He's really kind of the heart and soul, the energy of this Aviators defense. I remember speaking with him and Coach Datillo and a couple of his teammates there at Kenwood Town Center for our Chick-fil-A broadcast of our podcast this past summer. And Apollo is definitely a guy that will bring it. He's played some running back in the past, but certainly the leader of that defense. I think it's going to be a fantastic atmosphere there at Sycamore Junior High on Friday night, and it will definitely be our game to watch as we have our WCPO coverage Friday night there from Sycamore Junior High. Hamilton and Lakota West, another matchup of 2-0 teams. I was able to catch up with Big Blue Coach Nate Mahan earlier this week, and he says, hey, we have nothing to lose against Lakota West. Talking about an opportunity to face one of the best coaches in the entire state of Ohio, and Tom Bolden, but Nate has really been impressed with his play from his team overall. I mean, really, he's got a lot of underclassmen who are making a difference, including a sophomore running back, Keyshawn Stevens. You have their quarterback is really playing well, and Nate, being a 2003 Hamilton grad, he says, it just takes a lot of pride driving in every day and looking over at Virgil Schwarm Stadium and knowing that's the place that he played. And this is the first 2-0 start for the Big Blue since the 2016 season. So I know things are really going well for them right now. And talk about Lakota West, a 1-1 team. Tom Bolden led the Firebirds to a victory over Centerville last week after dropping that opener at LaSalle. And certainly the confidence is back there in Westchester, and Coach Bolden is really leading the charge for the Firebirds. Also want to mention Wyoming at Mount Healthy, another big-time matchup. The Cowboys off to a 2-0 start. They have a 33-game regular season winning streak. And you talk about the defending Division IV state champions being 15-0 last year. They've really picked up where they've left off. It all starts with senior quarterback Evan Prater. The UC commit continues to impress week after week. And funny thing enough, I was asking Coach Aaron Hancock, has he really captured any of the rushing or passing records there at Wyoming, that is, as far as the quarterback goes? And he says, no, you know what? He's so balanced with his repertoire, whether it's running the ball, passing the ball. He doesn't think he's up there at this point yet, but Coach Hancock's not one to look at the career milestones during the midst of the season, especially in week 3. So I think when it's all said and done, we'll see Evan up there. Also, final note, I want to mention Cincinnati College Prep and Coach Jeremy Flug, 2-0 for the first time in program history. Their sophomore quarterback, Mark Smith, rushed for 142 yards and 3 touchdowns and passed for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns in a big win over Greene High School last week. And, congrats to Coach Flug on what he's doing there with the program. And Cincinnati College Prep atop the Division 7 Region 28 rankings, according to Joe Itel, through 2 weeks. So that's all we have for you this week on the WCPO High School Insider. We will be back next week talking plenty of high school football as usual. We hope that you will join us then.